Thank you all very much for coming. I think we will start. I know that there is a lot of journalists who are covering the UP elections, so many of them have called this a separate traveling, but we are for the ones who come, thanks a lot. I think we'll just begin since it's getting late. I'm sure just like us, many of you have also looked at or followed the presentation by the finance minister of the presentation of the Union Budget 22-23. I would also like to welcome the people on Zoom right now who are listening to us as well. Thanks for joining in. Everybody expected something else from this budget. And what is that something else? We are in pandemic times. We are in a time of COVID. काफी लोगों ने शायद इस बजट को जैसे हमने देखा है आप लोग भी फॉलो किया होगा और इस बजट से क्या एक्सपेक्टेशंस थे कि हमारे जो हम लोग जब एक बजट इस टाइम जैसे कोविड की दौरान during the COVID and pandemic times, a budget that we would have had a budget that was much more people-centric, that was much more focused on ensuring recovery for people from one was the bad economic choices that have been made, but also because the health of the country itself is at peril. But unfortunately, this budget did not take into account the fact that people are really finding it extremely difficult to even survive during this pandemic times. There was no promise or there was no aspiration of the people being reflected in this budget. And therefore, it is a very big disappointment for us, for many of us who think that they could have announced much more robust plans and budgets to ensure that people will recover from the impact of COVID, both in terms of health or in terms of basic insurance for the people. Unemployment is rising. We saw what happened in Bihar. हर जब युवा लोग हैं जिनके पास काम नहीं है, जिनके पास माइग्रेशन की वजह से काफी दिक्कतें हो रही है, वापस माइग्रेशन रिवर्स माइग्रेशन वापस गांव पोस्ट कोविड के बाद चले गए हैं, उनके भी बहुत इश्यूज और दिक्कतें हैं क्योंकि हमें सब पता है कि अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट rate is not only rising but they was the highest. So we expected budgets to ensure boost in not just money in the richer people's pocket, but boost ensuring that the people on the ground are able to rise up again and get back into contributing. Fortunately, that within this, if we unpack figures a little bit more, we know that the issue is that the if you look at the unemployment, if you look at the other impact of COVID, we even people who are being affected by this are people from the Dalit and Adivasi community. Who are the migrants? Who are these people who've lost it? It's the lower percentile of the working people. So definitely unpacking that further, it is definitely Dalits and Adivasi. But unfortunately, this budget, for the first time in history, I think since budget has presented, they have not mentioned the total allocation for ST Finance. So वहां से शुरुआत होता है कि जब आप अपने स्पीच में इतना महत्वपूर्ण था, आप देते ही नहीं है कि दलित और आदिवासियों के बजट में कितना आवंटित हुआ है, उतना भी आप अगर आपके स्पीच में आप मेंशन भी नहीं करते हैं, तो वो ही एक शुरुआत है कि इस बजट का प्रायोरिटीज कहाँ पे है, किसको टैक्स रिबेट्स मिलता है और किसको टैक्स नहीं मिलता। तो इस दौरान इस बजट से हमें ये भी पता चलता है कि यहाँ से जब शुरुआत होता है कि आपको इतना इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं होता, you're not even mentioning the total budget. Yes, you have continuously mentioned, and she has mentioned in her budget speech that because of the pandemic and impact of pandemic, education of Dalits have been affected, but there's nothing to reflect in the numbers, in the allocation. कि अगर आपको लगता है कि there is the impact is so much on the Dalit and Adivasi, then उसके हिसाब से आपको बजट आवंटित भी होना चाहिए, लेकिन उसके हिसाब डिजिटाइजेशन के काफी लोग बहुत बड़े-बड़े काम करते हैं, लेकिन डिजिटाइजेशन हमारे लिए या जो दलित और आदिवासी समुदाय के लिए ये एक बहुत ही गंभीर मुद्दा है, क्योंकि कितना भी आप डिजिटाइजेशन करें, लेकिन घर तक और कम्युनिटीज तक ये बात नहीं पहुंचते हैं। अगर सॉरी ये कनेक्टिविटी नहीं है, तो ऑब्वियसली कोई भी कितना भी बड़ा डिजिटाइजेशन आप बोल दीजिए, उसका कोई इम्पैक्ट नहीं होने वाले हैं दलित और आदिवासी यूथ पे। So there is absolutely no budget to ensure that there is either laptops or smartphones, or not just smartphones and laptops, also connectivity to ensure that वो भी नहीं है इस budget में. So I will not continue to speak. Sharing the panel with two panelists who have done extensive work on this issue. So I will request Paul to give an overview overall on the budget numbers and what it means for us overall. Paul Divakar is the chairperson of the Asia Dalit Rights Forum and the budget expert and has been working on this issue for the last 10 to 15 years. So, Paul, if you can just look at the overall budget, and on my left is Adivasi Singh, who is the National Coordinator of National Campaign of Dalit Human Rights and has been working on number crunching for the last 10 years as well. And he will specifically focus on what it means for education and education justice for the youth from the community. So, Paul.
Friends, greetings from this whole team which is analyzing the Dalit Adivasi budgets. Welcome again. If you want to understand what is there for the Dalits and Adivasis, we have to look at the numbers, of course. Numbers do speak. But beyond numbers, we have to see what is the quality of the allocations that they have paid and what is the quality of allocations that they have reduced and why they have reduced. And also see how the schemes are analyzed and what is the overall purpose and direction of the schemes. So I'll try to just take you through quickly. Then afterwards, please feel free to have any clarifications. If you look at just the allocations for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, I do not know if it's clear enough. On the left side, you have the allocations of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. The total expenditure budget estimate this year is 44 lakh crores, and you know that the plan and non-plan has been taken away. So after that, we are looking at what is the central schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. So we looked at the entire around 103 demands of the whole budget, the volume 1, and the total eligible central sector schemes and centrally sponsored schemes are 12 lakh 30,000 crores, and that is of course both. It's a little different if you see one is 12 lakhs 30 and the other is 12 lakhs 26 crores. Why the difference? Niti Aayog has brought in certain guidelines. Now, what we think of those guidelines is a separate thing. They have looked at some ministries which are need not give, they are not obligated to give any a form of allocation for the scheduled caste. They've divided, and the rest of the things, rest of the departments, they have set certain amount depending on the nature of the department. In some ways, I think we have to agree. Of course, we are appealing, saying that we need to take many of these because there is not a ministry that you cannot apportion or you cannot set aside resources from that. But that's a different thing. So we followed the Ministry of Finance, which has guidelines. It is there in the books which you will have. We have taken those guidelines, followed those guidelines, and from those guidelines, if some of the schemes range from I think even 20%, some of the departments go here to 6%. So it ranges from these. So if you arrive at that, as per the Niti Aayog guidelines, which is given by the Ministry of Finance, you come to the due allocation should be 1,82,000 and odd crores. It's about 1,83,000 crores for the scheduled castes and 98,664,000 for the scheduled tribes. Now that is the due. But what they have allocated is also not very far. It's only a difference of what 40 crores here and probably around 11 crores on this side. So they have actually, I think many of you may have seen, there is a statement called 10A and 10B. 10A is for the scheduled caste, 10B is for the scheduled tribe. So if you look at the totals of this 10A, it is 1,42,342 crores for scheduled caste and about 90,000 crores for the scheduled tribe, which is quite a bit. But you see there is already a gap there. And then what we have looked at it, we will come a little later. There are schemes that are specifically designed to address the needs of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. We are calling it targeted schemes. The targeted schemes among all of this, we are only amounting to 53,793. So if you look at the allocation, it should go up to at least 15.6 as per the own guidelines, but they have allocated only 11.6 crores of 6% of the total eligible. And here out of 8 point something they have allocated 7.3%. But when you come here, which is the target, which is the schemes that directly flow to the scheduled caste, the financial, the amount of these schemes that are relevant to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, it's only 4.5 and 3.6%. So there's a gap. So if you look at the total gap for the scheduled caste, it is 1,30,000 crores. There is a gap, and 55,077 is the gap. There is quite a lot. I mean, if you understand, just to understand the implications of it, I think many of you know this scheme, postdoctoral fellowship for called Rajiv Gandhi fellowships. The first time they have allocated, maybe as many of you would know, about 10 years ago, they have allocated this scheme, they've designed this scheme specifically because at the postdoctoral level, or doctoral and postdoctoral level, you have hardly any scheduled caste or scheduled tribes about 11 to 12 years ago. That was then Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship has been formulated, and the entire scheme at that time it was around 50 total for SC/ST, it's around 100 crores, and over the years now I think it's around 300 crores that they have allocated. Just one scheme of 100 to now I think it's more than 300 crores. Today you see there is a huge mass of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes scholars in almost any university that you got. Now, if 100 to 200 crores has the power to increase the human resource at the level of doctoral studies, imagine what 1,39,000 crores can do to the lives of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. It's unimaginable. Actually, if one really allocates this for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes systematically with a strong implementation political will, you will see that in 5 years there will not be any, maybe about 10 years, there will not be any need for this whole scheme. That anyway, the general scheme or the general budget itself will be able to cater to the needs. If you look, therefore, at the whole thing, see the layers of exclusion is seen in the budget here. The blue is very good, which again you see it's 1,82,000 should be given. Allocation is 1,43,000. The target is 43. So this kind of shows. But when you look at the relevance of these schemes, I will come to that in a while. Obsolete schemes. I think some of you may have known some years ago, they have Delhi government is allocated for the Commonwealth Games, you know, in the name of scheduled caste or games. And we used to think, wow, it's a fantastic amount of resource that has gone for the training of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes youth for participation in the Commonwealth Games. But then when we looked at what is this allocation leads to, the total allocation was around 762 crores, a large amount of it for roads. And roads laying tar, rubber tar on the roads, where junctions, the cars in Delhi, if you drive, you don't get into an accident. Therefore, preventing accidents for those who can afford these huge cars in the capital has gone from the scheduled caste money. The stadiums were built with the scheduled caste money. The Nehru Stadium here in Delhi, half the stadium has come out of the scheduled caste money. Now, similarly, each year's budget, I will give the list of the schemes a little later, where it's suppose it's Mandrega. You are giving the work, you are giving a scheme, and then they are doing the work, and then they are being paid wage. That should not come under the guidelines of the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe budget. But then a huge amount of money is being allocated for Mandrega and claiming that is there. The distribution of the discount, the electricity distribution, part of the money is going from the scheduled caste. The government employees pension, 1995 employee pension fund, part of it is still being coming from the scheduled caste budget. Those are all 30% or 39 to 29% obsolete schemes. The indigenous urea and the foreign urea that is being imported for the agriculture, there's almost around 5,062 crores is coming out of the scheduled caste money alone. Scheduled tribes money is another 2,000 crores. So you look at 7,000 crores is coming only to give the subsidy for the urea. Why do you need that? So the obsolete side is about 20. The general, the whole budget you have is supposed to be the whole 6 things, right? What they are showing, the earlier Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and today's scheme, I think it is called Samagra Shiksha scheme. A large percentage of that scheme, around almost 7,000 crores of the scheduled caste money, is coming from the Dalit budget. And similarly, for the another 3,000 crores is coming from the scheduled caste. So, all the Jal Jeevan Mission for all citizens, water is a thing, and therefore you are allocating in the Jal Jeevan Mission. But why do you show Jal Jeevan Mission a portion as specifically for the scheduled caste? Design a scheme for so around almost 50% of the schemes are all general schemes. So it's a total miscommunication to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Probably they think that scheduled caste, scheduled tribes may not really know how to look at the numbers, how to crunch, how to analyze the numbers. So they say anything and everything goes. And the targeted schemes is only 24%, and there you have seen 50,800 for both SC and ST together. Then when you look at the women schemes, you see the whole thing around the total general schemes and sponsored schemes are 12 lakhs, out of which only 11,000. There also, many of them are like these obsolete schemes, many of them are general schemes, and only few of them are even within the 11,000 for the women. So the layers of exclusion that you see in the allocation level, then in the type of schemes, and then there is another area that we have to look at. I'll come to the 5-year trend a little later. This is the budget credibility. When you say budget credibility, that means how much have you allocated in the BE, the budget expenditure, and we know that after 2 years you get the utilization, actual expenditure, AE. Now, if you look at the BE and the AE of the same year, so therefore for this year, of course, we will get that figure only after 2 years. But if you look at the previous years, that is 2021, there is a systematic gap. Even the schemes that are going targeted schemes, then you see the allocation. There is the layers of allocation. If you look at there for the SCs, there is 12%, around 14%. The schemes are being spent, and then for the SCs, it looks as though schemes are utilization a little better than the scheduled caste, but this is the pattern. So 3 clear layers of thing. Let me just look at and tell you what is the relevance of these schemes. If you see here, Manrega, 15,000 crores is allocated for the scheduled caste. Now that should not be. In the earlier years, Manrega was not accounted for in the scheduled caste. Urea subsidy I was telling you about was 3 lakhs 80,000, and then again you see another 1 lakh for the subsidy. I think if you look at 1,70,700 crores and another 3 lakhs income, so 5 lakhs 5,500 crores just for urea subsidy. And you look at the others, there is a modified interest subvention scheme. There is interest that is being taken to the farmers for the loans that they have taken. They are setting off the loans with this scheme called modified interest subvention scheme, which is 3,328 crores. You look at another, see in the farm sector alone, you see a huge area, almost about 12,000 crores are being spent. Nutrient-based subsidy for potassium and potash is 3,486 crores. And then you look at, actually, we did not put the entire department. I think Vikrantji will share the Department of Higher Education and the Department of School Education. That is, the education is the major area where you can easily design schemes for the development and welfare of the scheduled caste students. But there, hardly 5% of the entire schemes which are separately allocated under the Department of School Education and Department of Higher Education go for the scheduled caste. Not the whole. They have already set aside almost together. Department of Higher Education, School Education, I think is around, for the scheduled caste is around 15 to 16,000 crores. And similarly for the scheduled tribes is around 8,000 crores. In that, only 5% of the schemes have reached for the education. We have very clearly put the figures, like for example, they've given for University Grants Commission and several others, and I'm sure Adikant will share about that. All the schemes, the amounts that they are giving to IITs, IIMs, National Institute of Technology, All India Council for Technical Education. Crores are being given with just going to the institutions and not to the individuals of scheduled caste and scheduled caste. And the same thing, and here, while false schemes, erroneous schemes are given thousands of crores, here you see schemes that impact the development and welfare of the scheduled caste. You see here 36 crores, 30 crores, 25 crores. PM research 36 crores. At the national level, what is 36 crores for the PM research fellowship? For the whole 201 million population, you have just given 36. National Means Cum Merit Score 66. National Scheduled Caste Finance Development Corporation 50 crores. Scholarship for higher education and schemes 47 crores. Venture capital. You look at this, the schemes that are allocated for the scheduled caste on the one hand, has not crossed the 2-digit figure, only two digits, no, not even 100. Whereas here, all those FALTU schemes are given in thousands of crores. It's a very, very clear. And the same thing for the scheduled tribes, and then under visualization, if you look at the schools, 4 crores for scheduled tribes. I mean, this shows that again, this country, do we take access? It's a tax money that we are taking up. Is it in any way reaching the khajana of the treasury of the central government? Of course. For every rice, wheat, electricity, whatever we use, we are paying tax. The taxes are coming, but disproportionately they are provisioning for the service. And similarly, the kind of allocation, general, what I have shared earlier in all this Jal Jeevan Mission, 13,000 crores. Flexible pool, entire Department of Medical Health budget is only a general budget and not able to be targeted for the scheduled caste. Crop insurance, guarantee emergency credit line, Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana schemes, and several of those are all big. Friends, we have given an appeal to the finance minister. I do not know whether this one comes or not. Okay. Dolly? Sorry. Can you just see how I can put this? What we have given is for the entire amount of the allocation. There was prior to this, there was a discussion with the several groups representing the. I think it's some problem here in the way it is there. I come to the. Yeah. Yeah. So we've given a list to the finance ministry last year and all the years. This year they have not had a thing, but we are posting it, we are giving it. We've given it earlier. We say in higher education there are schemes. In agriculture there are schemes. In the cooperation, in the community regeneration, in the health and family welfare, in housing, and if you look at all the social justice, skill development, there are schemes that are very well designed, and you can actually have people who are able to design these schemes. 1 lakh for 1,82,000 crores for scheduled caste and 98,664,000 crores for scheduled tribes. There is that talent from the community that will to design these schemes and make it implemented is very clearly there. Now, question is it anyway that the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, are you treating them as citizens? Are you allocating the resources? And if it is not, then what is the way out? Is it necessary for the courts to intervene in this matter? Is it necessary for the communities to stand up? Is it necessary for the MPs of these communities to take responsibility and raise these in the parliament to say, please stop these schemes which have no direct impact, and then ensure their schemes are designed, consult with the community, and make sure, build a transparent scheme with a clear redressal for any grievances to make sure that you are able to implement genuinely. We don't need these papers, we don't need these numbers, we only need our share in the budget. What we say, 25 Kamara is the one that we need to go ahead. Thank you very much. Any clarification later? These things are available. We're also being printed and will be brought, and hopefully by the time we finish this press conference, we will be able to provide you with a printed analysis of all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I think that we can see one of the main things that we'd like all of you to take away is that which are the schemes that are being started, the good schemes that need to have more allocation. She spoke about missing out on education during COVID, but though the post-matric scholarship, I think Alexandra would say a little bit more as an increase, but it seems like hospitals and other schemes where we could have seen an increase in allocation is not there. So that's what I think Paul was trying to say, that the schemes which are supposed to have allocation do not have, and the other schemes that have no, what are we going to do with urea if we don't have land? That's the kind of thing. So why are you giving us urea if we don't have land to cultivate? So I think that some sense, there's no logical sense in what this budget is to be very honest. Thanks so much, Paul. I will come back to questions at the end.
Thank you, Rina. First of all, I would like to give thanks to our media friends for making their time and constantly supporting to the cause of Dalit tribal to highlight the issue across the country. I plan to dig into the numbers and the details of the scheme on the ground, and will give you a sense of how where the post-grad scholarship is headed. As you know that this post-grad scholarship is one of the oldest schemes in the country, which was started in 1944, and it was the dream scheme of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar for our children, and this is one of the largest schemes in India that covers almost 62 lakhs student benefits. As you saw, what kind of challenges these two schemes are facing. If you see the deposit side of the analysis, almost negligible percentages earmarked for the targeted scheme. And post-matric scholarship is one of the best schemes in this two budget, special component and private supplement. But over the last couple of years, it's been facing a lot of challenges. Students are not receiving scholarship timely, and funds is not using Ministry of Finance to the nodal Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment and private ministry. So these are the major challenges that's been facing. Last year also, the scheme was about to scrapped by the government, and because of appeal and because of the student open, government continue to continue the scheme with a huge amount of completion, almost 35,219 crores for 6 years for entire SST student. So this year, the positive thing is that government has increased the allocation for post-matric scholarship, which is 5,660 crore. Last year, it was 3,416 crore. And it's a huge increase of almost 2,200 crores towards this scholarship. But as you see, the last 5 years allocation and utilization trends, it reveals that the utilization is always remains more than the budget estimate. 68% students are not received their post-matric for the last 2 years. And more challenging area is that 68% of survey students says that they will not be able to continue their study because of lack of financial security and lack of food security. So this is the real challenges. There are also a lot of challenges. If you see the case study in Bihar, in Odisha, and Jharkhand, it will be really painful story. And this post-matric scholarship, as you know, that this is one of the best scholarship scheme in the school budget. Other than this, there is also one more beautiful scheme called good scheme called Shreyas, Young Achiever Scheme. This scheme comprises of four branch schemes called top class education and free coaching for SC student, SC and OBC student, national overseas scholarship, and national fellowship course. Top class education is for students who are studying in IIT, AIMS, and this is the top scholarship for our children. But the allocation is very meager in nature. This year the allocation is only 108 crores, which is close for entire country. Just imagine, this amount is really minuscule. Regarding national overseas scholarship, the allocation is only 36 crore for the entire country, entire student across country. And if you see the national overseas scholarship, 36 crore means nothing. And government has a plan to cover 100 students per year. And they will be studying abroad, not here in Delhi, in India. 36,000 allocation for 100 students every year. Just imagine what kind of situation is going on. Regarding national fellowship scholarship, the allocation is only 173 crores. This year, last year it was 300 crores. And the government has reduced substantially 300 to 173 crores. This scholarship is meant for the PhD and MPhil student. And PhD and MPhil student only 173 crores for a student across the country. What kind of allocation is made under this budget? You could just imagine. And regarding pre-matric scholarship for SC/ST student, this time they have stopped the pre-matric scholarship for children, those whose parents are engaged in unclean occupation. Very pathetic situation. Those, the children whose parents are engaged in unclean occupation, but government, they are giving service to entire country. Every morning we get their service, whereas in return they don't get any, service from government, and it is their duty to ensure that the children of the parents, those who are engaged in unclean occupation, should get quality education, at least proper education. So this is what the picture is. So regarding utilization, in 2020, the allocation for pre-matric scholarship was 700, but the utilization against 700 is only 569. Just imagine, it's underutilization. Whatever money is also allocated is not spent for the beneficiary. So this is the ground reality. And recently, very recently, yesterday, Minister of Finance Ministry announced that there will be almost 12 to 1200 television channels for students, those who did not get the opportunity to access the online education. Our study reveals that almost 22% students did not access internet in the village area. I am from the Kandhamal district. In my village, even after 75 years of independence, electricity is like, I cannot say. If I go to my village, hardly I get the phone call. My phone is dead in my village. So so this is the reality. Huh? So how our children can access all these facilities, TV channels, those who do not have TV in their home, those who do not have electricity in their home. So this is the reality. I mean, the challenge is that because of the top-down approach has been adopted by the government, the challenge always remain dream. No? That is the reality. The government should at least uh, do some consultation, organize some consultation in the ground, take the consent and plan. I mean, they should listen to the people in the ground, and based on that, the plan should be made and policy should be made. So these are the challenges. And regarding demand, uh, as for our study findings, our demand is spending scholarship for students those who have already got dropout should be provided and give this should, I mean, government should give one more chance for enrollment. This is one demand. Second demand is whatever amount is spending that should be released immediately to the student account. And government should immediately establish the helpline for the student in order to have the redressal mechanism in the country. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Adivasi, for that for the information on the scholarships and the education schemes. I'll just quickly go through some information, some other a little bit more on what it means for Dalit women. We all know that the last, I think, most updated data on the NCRT 2019, it says about 7,000 atrocities and acts of violence against Dalit women. And we expect a much larger budgetary allocation, not just because there are 7,000 crimes, but because the Prevention of Atrocities Act is not an act that the word itself is prevention. So what are we doing about prevention? No, we want allocation to prevent these crimes, not post the 7,000 crimes. So we would have like schemes that are dealing with how we can prevent violence and how we can provide security to women, specifically from the marginalized communities. As usual, 600 crores, which was also allocated last year, was allocated this year, out of which only 180 crore is for the implementation of POA for Dalit women. So again, a pittance amount compared to the violence and atrocities that are happening. So that's something that we would really demand that, they really look at this, at least in the revised estimates, if they can go and increase both the overall amount of 600 crores, but also increase what it is for the Dalit women. It has been for years that we have been shouting to end the whole system of manual scavenging. I think this is a shame on this country. We all know this. It's still continuing. Every year the promises are made, but we now have an excellent act to eliminate the manual scavenging totally. So there also, we do know that over the last few years, so many people have also died during this 941 deaths until August 2021. So that's a shame that this is happening in this country, globally. There also you see that the scheme that is for the
Education for children is no longer, there is no allocation for that. Last year it was 100 crore, it's now reduced to 70 crore for the self-employment scheme and rehabilitation. So again, a cut in the budget. These are areas that we would never expect cuts, because we expect that the government is serious about the elimination of women engaged in manual scavenging, and also men who are engaged in some of these. But it doesn't look like that, seeing what the budgets are actually telling us, or it's a reverse of what we think. Sometimes I think that somebody is just sitting behind a computer and doing these numbers, because it really doesn't make sense. About 18 crores development of wildlife habitat, Project Tiger 33 crores, Project Elephant 5 crores. All this is going from the SCP budget. So I don't understand what is Project Tiger and Project Wildlife and Project Elephant got to do with SC, really. I mean, even then, even according to the guidelines, they're not supposed to make, use it for infrastructure development. But वहाँ पे बोलते हैं कि ठीक है, दलित भी रोड यूज करते हैं, दलित भी स्टेडियम्स का उपयोग होता है, लेकिन यहाँ पे क्या करते हैं? वाइल्ड लाइफ सैंक्चुरीज में क्या हो सकता है? वो बजट यहाँ पे क्यों आवंटित किया है? So strange things are happening with the budget and the numbers. I hope that the finance ministry knows, why this is being allocated in it. Again, expectations versus the realities are totally different ball game altogether. We expected much more money to be given to the people, directly to the people, but that is not happening. We all know that if we're talking about strengthening an economy, then people have to have the money in their hands. So we are encouraging, and we demand that more money is given to the people on the ground as direct benefit transfers. I know many people may not believe in that, but if we were to build people's capacities, and I give them credit facilities, there's hardly any credit to ensure that people do have are able to come up with their own, entrepreneurial activities, etc. So that is where the money needs to go. Right now, the people need that hope, and I think that is what we have not got from this budget. So we are hoping that in the revised estimates between now and then, we will engage with both to ensure that the RE comes out with a revised estimate, but also ensure that for the next budget, there is a much more consultative and transparent process so that many community members can take part in this. The committees will be meeting from now onwards, so we will be also engaging with the parliamentary standing committees to ensure that, some of these things are also taken up by the community. I will now open the floor. Agar koi sawal hai, if anybody's got questions, and then we'll ask for the final comments. We also have got the printed copies. If everybody can just hold it, Paul and Adi. This is the printed copies that we've got. We will distribute both English as well as Hindi to all of you, which has the details. Hindi will come now, and also have the detailed analysis of this. Any questions? Any koi sawal?
One is comments on the economic survey aspects that the finance minister presented before. Second is a linked question, specifically to all of the whole pitching every year, consistently year after year, has been on this great future. Chief advisor has the audacity to say in Parliament that you decide which alphabet in the English a language should suit this curve because they don't want to talk about U curve or V curve. So it's very clear that it's something that this grandiose gesture of like this promises for future, but every year on it has been like that. Can we hold this government accountable on, for example, last 2 years of, for example, the specific instances that we brought out? Can we hold this government accountable on the expenditures part of it in a specific report that talks about probably taking 3 or 4 years like this? Because the economic survey has gone nowhere. It's looking like a huge.
Just mythical figures that they are trying to hold with absolutely. I think it's only at that time, even the economic survey is completely macroeconomy and does not have any figure. If you look at the economic survey, they don't really talk about the vulnerable communities. What is actually the bottom percentile is the schemes are affecting, impacting. None of that. I think they're only looking at industry. Maybe now they're taking stock of this crypto and then saying that we need to bring that into the tax. They're giving a little bit more freebies in the GST thing, but nothing at all for the communities that are the lower 30% of the percentile. They are really not doing. In 2010, we filed a complaint in the Delhi High Court, and then said Delhi High Court about the central government's allocations and also the Delhi state government at the time. We thought we should try it out. And then they provided, out of the blue, they provided some facts saying that, so many schemes are there. And then these people do not have any evidence as to why the schemes are not being reaching the community. And then we challenged, but at the time our advice was do not immediately get into that at this time because we don't have the necessary ground level data. But now when we really look at the thing, I think time has come for the communities to actually put this data up, both at the committee level, at the parliamentary standing committees, we do not know how much there, but also at the Supreme Court as an intervention on behalf of the public. So that is now being considered to see how we can hold at least this point, despite the fact that we have communicated to the finance ministry that kindly take these schemes away because they are not impacting on the community at all. How will the 3-lane road that you're building, from Raipur to Visakhapatnam be brought under the Scheduled Tribes Act? But then I think now we have to actually see which is the best way, because sometimes the courts are saying this is not within our purview. We are now considering that and then taking a special with the parliamentarians, taking it to the finance minister on one hand, and then seeing if we can approach some legal mechanism in the way to hold them accountable on putting these figures as part of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes allocations. So I think that is the only way that we feel this can be stopped. Other than, I think the parliamentarians, all of them, irrespective of the party, coming out and then saying this, which in these election years, whether that will be an effective way or not, I think it should be seen with the parliamentarians.
Thank you for your beautiful question. I really appreciate your idea. Even though we have lots of legislation, lot of policy across the country, in this country, but it's really a lot of challenges for implementation side, utilization also. It's a lot of challenges. I would like to just highlight one issue on PMS, post-market discovery. Very recently, the CAG report has highlighted that the standing committee recommendations are not taken into consideration by the government. Standing committee, as you know, that is one of the powerful committee in the parliamentary process. Even in spite of that also, even CAG's comment also, government is not taking it too seriously, it is not taken. That is the reality. That is why we've been requesting and appealing to the government that there should be social audit for the post-matric scholarship. And there is a positive sign that very recently the government has issued a new guideline for the post-matric scholarship. They are clearly saying that there will be social audit for this post-matric scholarship across the country.
Yes.
My question, I have two questions actually, but my first question is to Bina. She just mentioned that direct cash benefit plans would be better instead of these VA allocations. So my first question is that Niti Aayog had proposed a plan actually in November 2020 that the government should work on a plan which gives direct cash transfers to the SCBT. It is similar on lines of what is happening in Telangana Dalit Bandhu scheme. So do you think first that this would be a good idea in a way that you are proposing and in the way that governments are doing right now? That is my first question. Second question is, I attended this program last year also, and you had mentioned that allocation for manual scavengers for the period of 2020 was 100 crores, and then just 1 year before it was reduced to 100 crores, and it was not utilized at all. Like zero monies were utilized in this. So what is the status of that in this year financial allocations? And my last question is to Adivasi. We had mentioned about share scheme. So again, in 2020 to 2021, the allocation for the scheme was 450 crores. Last year it was 364 crores, and this year sir has mentioned in his presentation that it has been reduced to 48 crores. So they have been drastically reducing the targeted schemes, and the major concern for this is that the states that, first of all, the states do not demand this from the central government, and those who demand, mostly which are not BJP, they don't allocate money to these states. Like post-matric scholarship, Punjab government had been asking for it, but the central government had not been given it to the Punjab government, which had a major crisis in Punjab. So I want a take on that from
Sorry, what was your first question about the direct benefit transfers? Yes. So yes, see, we have to see the context in which we're living now. Many countries post-COVID actually gave direct benefits directly into the accounts of people, and that worked in many countries. Of course, the situation is very different in India, but we're also living post-COVID times. So help from, in this kind of a situation really would help. So yes, if there is a move like that, we welcome that move, definitely. But also we were expecting some kind of an insurance, basic insurance scheme for people, which was also not announced as something, which is already there, doesn't work in many. So that is one thing. So definitely much more higher allocation maybe, and also in terms of an insurance scheme that there are some direct benefit transfers that they have announced, like LPG connection to poor families, that the wo to rehta hai hai, but not in terms of cash directly, but LPG subsidy, sorry, the LPG at about 300 crores, and LPG connection in terms of direct benefit transfer 300 crores, and in terms of connection 70 crores. There are some smaller schemes that have been are there. I think they were there last year as well. In terms of not just the money allocated for manual scavenging, but many of the schemes we have seen that even for that matter post-matric scholarships, if you look at the implementation by the end of December, there's still almost 60% of funds still left. So between Jan and March, within these 3 months, they have to spend over 60% of the funds. So it's not just for this scheme. So that is a really worrying trend, because I don't know what they're doing in these 3 months, if at all they're showing at the end of 3 months that this money is getting or getting, utilized. So utilization is something that is very worrying because it's not only the fact that the money is not being utilized, but the students at the end, who is being actually suffering because of that. Is throughout the 2 years of the period, we also came out with a study of the access to education during COVID, where students did not get their entire scholarship money in the whole 1 or 2 years of COVID, and so they had to go back into doing manual labor. So somewhere, yes, the fact that their implementation is really poor, but then at the end of the day, it's the students that are suffering, or whoever the beneficiary is. I don't like to use that word much, but in this case, I use that, is the one who's suffering. So there we have to see, not just in the schemes, but most of the schemes, it's like that. And if at all they're showing full implementation by the end of March, then there should be some problem, in 3 months. But the third question, I think, was pretty clear.
Just one
Yeah.
The proposal that I was talking about, the Niti Aayog proposal, it says scrap all the targeted schemes and do this, and do the
Okay.
direct cash transfer. Now, would you agree to that?
Direct cash transfers for schemes which, let's say, post-matric scholarships.
Individuals.
Like in terms of, like say, the Janani Suraksha Yojana at the time of lactating mothers. Some of them are necessary, but to scrap the targeted programs and have universal programs, I think will definitely affect the lives of the scheduled caste. Not that many of them are really depending on some of these things, but I think the only return from the taxes we are paying to the government, the only returns we are getting is ours, the health, the housing scheme, the pre-matric, post-matric scholarships. Together they put around 7,000 crores, and some of the schemes which are being dealt by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs or Ministry of Social Justice. If you put all together, both SC and ST, they come to around, here is about 50,000 crores, there is about 7,000, 8,000 crores. The rest, I think that we should really ask them to be scrapped and give a real, the statement. What are you actually provisioning for the welfare of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes? That's it. I don't think. I think we should really ask them to completely scrap these schemes, which are just on the paper. And I'm not saying this from myself. I think the Ministry of Social Justice itself has done a ministry to ministry analysis under the present leadership, and they are asking, you've got let's say Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Health, so many schemes, just 2-3 schemes, and then this year implement. That was what the Ministry of Social Justice has been doing, but I don't think they've had much effect. And this year's they have not paid any attention. They've just, if you look at the schemes, the same thing what they have done the last 2 years. They are just cutting and pasting and then giving it to some kind of it's a thing. I think I'm sure one person is doing on the computer. They are giving some 5%, 10%, and then all. If you look at Jal Jeevan Mission, if you look at many of the large flagship programs, they are just cutting 16.4% डालो वो scheduled caste से 8% डालो वो scheduled tribes के आदिवासी budget के लिए. That's it. There is no plan. Each scheme, as you know, should have a plan. They don't have a plan of implementation. They don't have a monitoring mechanism for it. And then you call it a scheduled caste schemes. I think it is in some sense another economic atrocity that may be considered being done to the Dalits and Adivasis in this country.
I also think you cannot scrap. I mean, like you can't
Scrap the entire targeted, schemes and then do a DBT. For some schemes, like individual schemes, I think it is really good, like for scholarship. There's also the National Overseas Scholarship. I mean, it's like pittance, 10 crore. I don't know how many students can get for that. So I think those kind of schemes, we should see an increase in allocation. because that is directly going into people's hands. Is really one student from one family actually can take the whole family out of poverty. So it'll really work, in the longer run, but definitely not scrapping, because then that will give them, in the garb of this overall thing, then, finally nothing will come of it. So, like,
Yeah. So your first question was fund reduction. I mean, reduced from drastically
Drastically reduction of funds in targeted.
I mean, especially in Korea scheme. Yeah. Thank you so much. As you already pointed out that last year the total allocation was 435 crores. This year it is 364 crores under Shreya scheme. Shreya is nothing but an umbrella scheme comprising of four components. One is your one is your first class education, then the overseas scholarship, then the other is national policy. In this entire three scheme, who are the beneficiaries? The brilliant student are the beneficiary of these three schemes. Top class education. Who are the IITian? IITian means brilliant students. Overseas student, those who are going for overseas study, they must be a brilliant student. And as you said, national fellowship, those who are PhD, going for PhD and MPhil, must be brilliant student. But the problem is that always the top-down approach, there's a lot of challenges. There is no demand coming from generated from the student side. Even though they are brilliant students, maximum students, for your information, across the country are not aware of their rights on budget, financial rights. Not only student, I am talking about the general people. Almost 99% people of these countries are not aware of the budget. That is why this country development is still stagnant. Whereas in other countries, developing countries like US, Germany, Western countries, they are aware of this. And always we've been saying that people's participation in entire budget cycle is the holistic development or holistic development. A key to the holistic development. And in the entire framework, people's participation is lacking, especially students. They are the real beneficiaries and they are the real brain for this community, especially for Dalit and tribes. Their voice is not heard. Those who are aware of the scheme, their voice is not heard. Some IIT students are also associated to us. They are also, raising voice. The government, the institution is not, giving, focus on their demand. There is a lot of challenges in the IIT also. They are not receiving their scholarship timely. This is the ground reality.
any other questions? Yes, please.
When it comes to social justice, what we are witnessing is increasing atrocities for the last 20 years. At the same time, the exclusive special codes, which are supposed to be established in the Resident Justice Act, remain same, almost same, within the range of around 160 to 170 exclusive special codes for the last 6-7 years. And as you said, as you have mentioned, this year also, once again, 600 crores have been allocated for the implementation of the special code. And I know a huge amount of this fund goes for the infrastructure development of special codes, apart from the relief and rehabilitation for the victims of atrocities. Now, my question is there any figures, data, where we can say how much money has been utilized for the establishment of exclusive special codes, how much money is being spent on it, and how much money is being allocated for this year for the infrastructure development of special codes? So that analysis can be
Yeah. So this This 600 crores is not just for the implementation of, is for implementation of both PCR and Prevention of Atrocities Act. The components within that is not given in this, it will not be given in this document that we have, which is 10A, that gives only the larger this thing. But I'm sure that we can go into the details of where that money is being spent, either through the site, outcome budget, or on site, look at what are the expenditure that has been spent. And if not, it will be good to also file an RTI, to get that information, because I think that is crucial to the access to justice, because one of our demands have always been for special, to increase the number of special courts to deal with the high volume of cases that come in. So I think that is a good point, and I think we should follow it up. Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Like, for example, they have set up this national helpline. Now, our request has been, instead of only, I think this year the Ministry, Social Justice Ministry, has got 1,800 crores more than last year, which is, I think, a substantial. If you look at all these schemes, allocation of general schemes, look at that, 13,000 only for drinking water they have allowed. There's absolutely no way that they can monitor how much it's going. Now, half of that, schemes like that, if they are given to the Ministry of Social Justice, they will be able to ensure instead of 600 crores, they can easily take it to 6,000 crores, 10 times, and then say whether it is enabling the machinery, compensation to the survivors, lawyers' fee on the one hand, then preventive measures, educative preventive measures. The helpline for child life, which is the child line for the protection of child rights, is at least 10 times more than what the national helpline for scheduled caste has been there. So somewhere, I think there has to be a much more greater pressure put by our parliamentarians and all the political parties. Of course, all the activists we've been doing, but that's not sufficient. We'll have to see that the real allocations for schemes which have a direct take on the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes has to be the only way, where let's scrap all these general schemes. In any case, are not reaching the scheduled caste. They are at the last mile connectivity. There is either a corruption, diversion, or a complete, miss. We have seen how job cards are being used in Manrega. The SC/STs are not getting in several areas. Several of the schemes are not being reaching the community, even though it's on paper it's there. So somewhere that has to be asked for it to be channelized to the Ministry of Social Justice with, as per the guidelines, a special cell at the state level, at the central level, to see that they have a capacity to administer these programs. I think that is something is completely missing in the thing. We don't have the ministries don't have the capacity, the human resources that are needed to reach the person on the ground, the woman, the man, the child on the ground. We don't have them, and easily that capacity can be built by the Dalit budgets and the Adivasi budgets.
Yeah, I'd also like to just make one point on the a scheme called Support for Marginalized Individuals for Livelihood and Enterprise, called SMILE. This government is very good in bringing in acronyms, with these big names that come out with these acronyms. This is actually supposed to be a scheme for trans people and for persons engaged in the act of begging. But there is only allocation for the component comprehensive rehabilitation of persons engaged in the act of begging, while under the central sector scheme for rehabilitation of welfare of transgender persons, there is zero allocation. So you can see there also the absolutely invisibilization of the trans persons and their rights in this budget is also very evident that we can see. Okay, I think we can close. Yes,
I've
please.
been attending this for the last few years.
Yes.
Every year your regret was limited to this allocations. This year you are using the term scrap also. Scrap means scrap, as you mentioned.
Scrap the programs that are just simply putting on the paper saying that it is scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. We don't want to.
So any positive point you have taken in this, I came late. Any positive?
Yeah, if we have seen, we have given these list of schemes to the ministry. And these very clearly, in both in higher education, cooperation, agriculture, research, animal husbandry, and then drinking water, health and family welfare, housing, labor and employment, MSME sector, rural development, then school education, skill development, social justice, tribal affairs, women and child, water, farmlands, and also youth and sports together. Now, each of these schemes have already been given to the ministry. And we are saying, please, these are the schemes, implement them. They are there and then can be designed. You just have to make sure that these are given and then put out there. But somehow, I don't think that is where we are questioning. There is a lot of erroneous schemes, error in placing wrong schemes as to the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes budget. Design these schemes. And very clearly, and these are not just come out from here, these have come out from the suggestions that have been taken from across the country. Design these schemes, it is there. And in, I think it was last year and even in the middle of the year, we have given it to the finance minister. And we are giving it to the Ministry of Social Justice, Ministry of Tribal Affairs.
Yeah, in addition to what Paul is also saying, we welcome the move that they have increased the scholarship for post-metric scholarship from 3,000 odd crores to 5,660 crores this year. For SCs as well as for STs, it's about 3,400 and it's about 1,993 crore. For STs, it's reduced a little bit, but for SCs, it's increased. So that is a welcome move. However, the commitment by the government 2 years ago was to allocate 35,000 crores for over the period of 5 years, which is about 7,000 crores. So even not even the measurement of what we are saying we want 10,000 crores for the students post-metric scholarship, but just by their own bar and standards, it's still not reaching 7,000 crores. So though we welcome the move, we think that at least they should, allocate what they have committed. Yes.
Yeah. What positive thing is for us? Of course, post-metric scholarship, the amount is increased. Second positive thing is Ministry of Social Justice, the nodal ministry, has been already started the real-time outcome monitoring tool called EUTEM, where the real-time data are reflected. All schemes, allocation, utilization, and beneficiary numbers are also reflected, which is the positive sign for the community. And ministry, nodal ministry also doing a good job. And second thing is social audit is going to be in place. This is also another positive sign for the community.
Thanks, Adin. Thank you all for coming. We have both the Hindi, English version of the analysis as well as via the press release, which they will give it to you right after this conference. Paul, just 150 seconds if you have a last word, and I'll also request Adi and then.
No, I think we are anguished. The community is anguished that almost 2 lakh crores, which needs to be allocated, is getting lost in number games and in notional and general schemes, and it's just remaining on paper. Maybe, as we have shown here, only around 30% of the schemes have a chance of actually reaching the communities. Now, this kind of
gimmicks, playing gimmicks with people's resources, because this resource is coming from the treasury, which is the contribution of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. It is not coming from the Amir Lok. It is not coming from the rich people who are being taxed. It is coming from us. Now, this money we have a right to ensure they are made into schemes by the respective departments and be given. And I think that is the demand that these figures speak, that please do not mislead people by these figures. First, give correct figures with correct allocations. Number two, make sure that each of these schemes reach the communities. Yeah. Okay. So, my request, humble submission to the government is, government should focus proactive planning done post facto accounting as far as the Dalit and tribal budget is concerned to avoid all the general schemes. This is first. Second thing is, detailed beneficiary list should be reflected in the real-time data to maintain the transparency and the entire framework of Dalit and tribal budget. The third is, there should be annual evaluation to specific scheme meant for Dalit and tribal people to assess the status of the implementation on the ground.
Thank you all. Please join us for coffee after this and pick up also the analysis. Thank you. These lines of participants, some 20-25 people. So, well done. Thank you. Adivasi is really improving.
हो रहा था क्या लाइव स्ट्रीम हो रहा था सॉफ्ट कॉपी
You have 50